Hello and welcome. You're back with the Lone Wolf once again. Today I'm reading through an article called Did Millennials Finally Kill Flirting? And this is from evmagazine.com. Actually does have some pretty good articles from time to time, and all of them are written by women. So no one can come at me for hating. Recent article, 23rd of July. This article was brought to my attention by Better Bachelor. He published a video on it yesterday, I believe. So he beat me to it, but I've been planning to make a video for a couple of days on this one. So let's go through it. Many women dream about how they will finally meet the man who becomes their husband. They think up numerous romantic scenarios. Maybe he'll approach while I'm sipping a latte in a small coffee shop. No, I'm never going to do that. Maybe he'll strike up a conversation with me in an elevator. No, I'm not going to do that either. Or he'll spot me on the street and not be able to resist saying hi. Absolutely will not do that. He'll approach, we'll flirt, exchange numbers, and the rest will be history. This is fairy tale nonsense. Fairy tale. Maybe not last generation, but this generation it's fairy tale stuff. But in the modern age it's just not so. Young people increasingly meet online, and the millennial destruction of traditional social mores has pretty much killed flirting. No euphemism did that. And political motivations from do-gooders and people that meddle with the social fabric. Gone are the days of meeting in the park, at a dance, or even at the bar, really. Men just don't approach women to flirt these days, and it's largely euphemism's fault. See, she said it, not me. But there is something we women can do about it. How we killed flirting. The death of flirting occurred under the perfect storm of the Also Me movement. Campus sexual assault, panic. Street harassment hysteria. Yeah, do you remember those videos from years ago with the woman walking around New York for hours and hours and hours on end, and they truncated it all down to just the weirdos calling out, saying hello and stuff. Growth in ethnicist ideology and a newfound obsession with consent. During Also Me, the media and social media was flooded with stories of women retelling instances of misconduct. But what started out as tales of genuinely immoral behaviour soon morphed into something else. Women were complaining misconduct when a man was simply approaching her to signal interest, even if he had done so rather awkwardly or misread her and failed to comprehend her lack of interest. The idea was that he crossed the line he shouldn't have. It's all subjective reaction, so if a woman interprets it as being offensive or creepy, then that's what it is. There's no objective reality when the law's involved. These laws. Suddenly the phrases unwanted advance, unwanted hug, unwanted kiss were everywhere. Despite the behaviour being branded as unwanted, in many instances the woman hadn't made it clear that she wasn't interested in the first place. Women seem to be expecting men to read their minds and claim zero responsibility for their role in holding a boundary. Then they branded the man as a predator. Now many of these women probably genuinely believed it was the case that they were harassed. And this is because we have expanded the definition of harassment. In the past, something was only harassment if a boundary had been clearly established or communicated, and then someone repeatedly transgressed it. Not anymore. Now the mere expression of interest can be considered a potential violation. It's the natural progression of the false idea that men are the oppressors of women and should be viewed with suspicion. This worldview has totally killed flirting. Yeah, it has. I mean, dudes just aren't going to be taking that risk and treading the fine line, I should say. Because it's too risky. You don't want to jeopardize your career or your financial position or your freedom. You don't want to be locked up. So it's easier just to not bother. It's a sensible decision. It's a rational decision that you make. Men are now too afraid to approach. After years of being told that unwanted advances equals harassment, men simply don't want to risk approaching women out in the real world for fear of being accused of a dark motive later on. Before this sterilised culture emerged, we would naturally send signals, some subtle and some overt, that acted as clues for us to determine if someone was romantically interested. Maybe we caught their eye across the room and held their gaze. Maybe we smiled at them on the bus. Yeah, but it's so easy to misjudge that. It's so easy to misjudge that and misread the signals if you're a dude, and then act on them, and then nothing comes of it, or it's misinterpreted from their end, and it comes off as, creepy. This would be the signal for a man to make a more overt move, approaching us to chat or ask for our number. But why would a man make a more explicit move or start the flirtatious dance at all if he fears he'll be rebranded as someone sinister just for doing so? Men now approach only on dating sites where a woman's presence signals openness to being approached. Yeah, of course, but on dating sites, as I've spoken before, the odds are just not in your favour as a man, and it just sends more and more validation to the woman, and they get more and more selective. It's a waste of time, predominantly, but at least men are forced to use these apps because it's safer and it's more. I guess women are giving consent by being on the apps, I suppose, and there's less of a likelihood of being reprimanded or violating whatever the laws are at the moment. So it's a waste of time, but it's the only game in town, really, because you're not going to approach in the street. Cold approach is just so risky. Instead, men now approach only where it's safe. On a dating site where a woman's mere presence signals openness to being approached, how very safe and tidy, but it also takes a lot of the excitement and spontaneity out of life. Well, yeah, I can do without the excitement and spontaneity of being in a jail cell, thanks. Feminism sought to shift the power dynamics between men and women, and shift them it did, right into total sterility. We're now firmly held inside a bubble wrap culture in which women view the mere expression of interest as a potential violation, and men are too afraid to make a move for fear of being branded creepy. It's your world, you created it. How women can bring back flirting. The saddest thing about the death of flirting is that it eradicated the air of potential romance and hopeful expectation that a young woman could feel when she leaves her house. If men weren't so afraid to approach us, the right man for us could always be just around the corner, lending our experiences an air of magic and mystery. Instead, that hope is ever present. We find ourselves swiping on dating apps instead. So yeah, you're just missing the attention, missing the chase and public attention, that is. And this global situation hasn't helped either, I suppose. If we want to revive a culture where it's okay to flirt, the onus is really on women to make it... You've got that right. You've absolutely got that right. The onus is really on women to make it clear to men that we're okay with being approached in public, that we're either going to accept their offer or politely decline, not brand them as a creeper if we're not interested. Yeah, you absolutely have to act. You have to put out more articles like this. You have to exert influence politically as well, because that's what it's come down to now. I think in Nottingham, here in the UK, they had these misogyny laws that basically criminalised unwanted advances. So if someone decided to, they could actually exert that law against you, which is incredibly dangerous to even like innocent men who are just trying to make advances to show their interest in someone and to start a relationship with someone. Exceedingly risky. Men, of course, also need to clearly read our signals, whether they're signals of interest or disinterest, and be willing to go away when we say no. Again, reading women's signals is incredibly difficult as well, because they're so subjective, and it's like learning a new language. It's a lot of the time, it's just not worth the effort. You're better off learning a new skill or a new trade. Feminism has told women that we lack power, which is a lie. I agree. We have a tremendous amount of power. The reality is that women are alluring, and as such we hold a lot of power. Masculine energy pursues, while feminine energy responds and receives. Being on the receiving end of romantic advances means we have all the power to say yes or no. We're the gatekeepers of romantic encounters. Yeah, that's exactly right. But men are the gatekeepers of relationships and marriage, as Kevin Samuels so often says. If we women want to reverse this culture, where men think they shouldn't ever approach us, we need to learn how to be open to advances, while also clearly communicating our boundaries when necessary. Instead of being quick to accuse, when we simply aren't interested, we can learn how to gracefully rebuff unwanted approaches, while still being open to making new connections. We could learn when it's time to say no, but also how to be polite when doing so instead of automatically branding him a creep. For instance, if a man you aren't interested in gets the wrong idea and asks for your number, you can politely decline. I'm very flattered, but I don't have romantic feelings for you. That's actually happened to me once. The girl said, yes, she was flattered and stuff, but she was already with someone else. I appreciated that. It was fine. But that was 10 years ago. Or if he touches you in the way you don't want him to, say, I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong idea, but I should let you know that I'm not interested. This to me just sounds like common sense, but the way society's stacked at the moment, it's lunacy. It's on a different planet. It's largely up to women to end this culture of fearful puritanism. We need to stop assuming that every time we're approached, it's some gross violation. Women need to remember the power we have when it comes to men. We have the power to decline an unwanted advance firmly without treating every advance as an assault. Closing thoughts. The ethnicist millennial culture that has equated any discomfort with the violation of boundaries has eroded all the fun that men and women used to have in flirting and seeking a partner out in the wild. Many men have responded to ethnicist ideas that they ought to be viewed with suspicion by refusing to approach women in the real world entirely. But we can revive flirting if we handle male advances with grace, class, and a willingness to clearly communicate our boundaries. Yeah, you're going to need a lot more than just this article. I agree with a lot of the points here, but you need to change the fundamental structure of the legal system in the West. It's not going to happen overnight. These issues have been building for such a long time. And there's no comments, so I was actually quite looking forward to the comments on this, but there aren't any. So yeah, we're going to need a lot more than just these articles and talking points from the female side, the women's side, if we're going to actually see a sea change in the current situation. This has been building for so long, generations now, that it's going to take a lot more than just an article to address the problem. At the moment, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, man. And so many of us are aware of that. And although I do agree with some of the points that she's made here in this piece, there's just too much to be done in the short term and the long term. Things need to be done from a political, legal, and social standpoint. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be keen to see your views and opinions down below. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.